I love what I teach because it is relevant to the world. Hi, welcome to Mr. Parker Meets. I'm Stewart Parker. Hi, my name is Stewart Parker, and I am the 2021 Orange County Public Schools Teacher of the Year, and this is another episode of Mr. Parker Meets, and I'm really excited to get to talk to these great arts educators. They have been teaching with my wife. They taught with my wife for many years, and so I heard all of these stories about how awesome they were, and so when I had the opportunity to pick up a list, I wanted to make sure I included both of them for this. And so Jesse Cohen is the theater director at Innovation Middle School. He also was a finalist this year for Orange County Teacher of the Year. So I'm excited to have him join me tonight. And Evan Powers is the choral director at Avalon Middle School, and he was their Teacher of the Year at Avalon this year. So it's great to have both of you join me for this. And so I'm really excited to talk to y'all about arts and education and kind of working through the pandemic, and then also just the importance of arts at your school level. So like I always do, the first question is I like to go with is, how did you get into teaching? Kind of how did you get here? How did you get to teach what you're teaching and whatnot? So Evan, we'll start with you.
It was arts experiences in my school experience that got me hooked on teaching. So I was on a school trip. We were on an international trip with my choir to Italy, and we were singing a piece in the cathedral, like in the same town that the piece was written in. And I just remember having this completely transcendent performance experience, and during that, I was supposed to be thinking about the music, and my mind immediately drifted to, I want to be able to give this experience to students in the future, and I want to be a part of giving them this unforgettable arts experiences. And so it was really I had been thinking about it off and on going into that, but it was in that moment when I said, this is what I need to be doing. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
very cool. Jesse?
So I actually kind of grew up not necessarily expecting to be a teacher, but it's in my blood. My dad was a teacher, my aunt's a teacher, my uncle's a teacher, my grandma's a teacher. And I used to give my little sister pop quizzes in the basement, and then would get promptly punished when I gave her stuffed animals better grades than her. But I started as a social studies major. I always did theater and loved the element of community and the element of family that comes with that. But I grew up in Pennsylvania, and theater wasn't a course that was offered. It was just something you did as an extracurricular. So I went to school for social studies education because I always wanted to teach and wanted to be a part of the process, and then would want to run a theater program after school. And then when I moved down to Florida, the opportunity presented itself when I was at my old school to start a theater program there. And it's just been go ever since. It has been, I'm similar to Evan, giving that type of experience that I had to other people. It's such a driving force and such a wonderful experience and opportunity that we get.
That's great. So I was in band when I was in middle school and high school, did theater, musical stuff at the school. So theater teachers and music and chorus teachers and band teachers are always near and dear to me. So I always have a great a love for y'all. And I love those stories. I love how you connect from the past and what you in here. So one of the things I just want to know is, like, what is your philosophy with music education, and how does that fit into the whole education of a student? So why is that an important part for kids to be involved in the arts at their school? So whichever one you want us to start.
Since it's a music question, I'll go, and then maybe Jesse want to answer it.
Music
we're good. So music gets the brain firing at all ends, and just complete. I mean, if you look at brain scans of kids while they're listening to music or while they're making music, it's lighting up all over the place. And so it is it's so important that students have those music and those arts experiences as a part of their school experience. I mean, if a kid is just coming off of music class or theater class, and then they go into math, they're so brain stimulated and they're so engaged and they're so ready to learn. And those, neurons are firing, if that's what neurons do. And
sounds good to me.
Sure. And it just, it helps to open up their brains and help with their, creativity and just get them really helping with retention of information as well. So that's a way that, music and the arts helps to enhance a student's education in other subject areas, but really in its own right. When you're in music and you're in theater, you're constantly doing critical thinking. You're constantly problem solving. You are holding yourself accountable for taking the skills that you learn in class and applying them in 1,000 different ways at once, whether you're reading a script and figuring out how to interpret that script, or whether you're reading a piece of music and figuring out how to use musicality and dynamics and text expression to make that piece of music come to life. I mean, there are so many, literally thousands of skills that are happening in the arts classrooms that are making kids' educational experiences whole, and that are really putting their brains to work and helping them to be experiential learners. And then, you can go way beyond that and talk about the social emotional aspects of arts education that are so important for kids, and connecting them to one another and connecting them to the world around them. I mean, you could really go on for years. And so I'm going to pass the baton to Jesse to continue going on with that story.
Yeah, and I love that Evan brought up the cell component, because that is such a critical part. And Evan's exactly right, that the arts classes get you to think about your core content classes in a different way. And in addition, you have to learn how to create community and to communicate with people that you wouldn't necessarily talk to, and get your point across in different and creative ways. And that ranges from finding that purpose and that reason that you're singing that song, or to the reason why this person wrote this text and how you can communicate that. And I mean, especially with our classes, they are a way for students to almost relax for a second, that they're not as bogged down by the curricular content that they have, let's say in a math class or an English class or a science or social studies, where some people thrive, and that's wonderful. I was always a social studies and math kid. That was awesome. But but there's a different sense of feeling when you're in a class where you're supposed to just feel your feelings and express yourself in the way that feels natural in those moments. And especially for us in middle school, these kids are all starting to find themselves, and they're starting to find where their passions lie and what they want to pursue and how they want to help change the world. And our classes allow them those opportunities to use texts, to use pieces, and to use other avenues than just that straight line that a lot of people walk down. You get to see things from a different perspective, and it's incredible to see what these kids are able to do. There's constant times where I'm hearing from other teachers that I never hear this child talk in my class. How do you get them to talk on stage? There are so many different ways that students can thrive, and having these types of arts classes is such a wonderful opportunity to allow them to really be themselves and to celebrate themselves.
Jesse, I remember our first musical that we did at Avalon Music Man. I remember Miss Fadia came up to us and was like, I had no idea this kid could sing. And it was just awesome. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all did the Music Man. I love the Music Man. It's one of my favorites. It's amazing.
It's a good one.
I play the trombone, so it's everything. And there, so y'all hit on this, and I want to go a little bit more into it. So y'all talked about community and stuff like that. So y'all do a lot to build community within your group and there, because there's always such a really tight-knit and community within that. So what are some ways you do that? But also, how do you add to the greater school community? How do your theater, music programs add to that greater community as well? So what are some specific things within there that you'll talk about the importance of it, but what are some things that you do in your classes to build that community but then how does that impact the greater school community? When you talk about social, emotional, all of those things.
So I think a lot of what we do, it shows how you can take moments and project them larger. I mean, there's so many opportunities where we take our students to perform at varying places around the community, whether it's Barnes and Nobles, whether it's an opening of a restaurant, whether it's somewhere where you have the opportunity to kind of showcase the talent. And similar to the way the teachers are, a lot of the community members kind of, they don't look at middle school and think differently, but a lot of people have those high expectations about high schoolers and what they can do. And then they get to see these middle schoolers and they're like, wow, these kids are talented. These kids have that drive. They have that potential. And it's just giving them the opportunity to take themselves further. I mean, there was a time when we were at Avalon that we went to a Solar Bears game and we started to kind of engage that. And we got so many people who were just at the game reaching out and asking about that. In terms of events and things at the school, I mean, it is all a constant process of integration and collaboration. We are so thankful to be in a community that really receives the arts well. We are constantly getting businesses who come to us and we go to them to say, hey, how can we help you? How can we help benefit your program? And the same with us. We want to hold events and we want to hold things at these places because, especially with the arts, I mean, it's a really incredible thing that we do kind of have a tangible product that can be taken to other places to showcase. You're not going to be able to, I mean, you have a science fair, but you're not going to necessarily be able to take a math group out into the community and get that same type of reception. And it's really wonderful.
I was in math counts in high school and we went and competed. Yes!
But I don't remember touring with them.
We went to the local university and we did the competition. It was a good competition. I liked the team part. Anyway, well, and this is not unique to my program, but a lot of chorus teachers and theater teachers, and band and orchestra for that matter, talk about like a music family or an arts family. So chorus family is like the big thing. It's like the cornerstone of of my chorus program at Avalon Middle School. And every year it's chorus is family and family is something. And so like family is connected was our theme a couple of years ago. This year our theme is chorus is family and family is engaged. And so we because we need to stay engaged with each other right now, especially the kids learning at home. And so you know, at the start of the year, we break down what does it mean to be a family and the different behaviors of treating each other like a family, showing respect to people as if they are a part of your family, showing up for them like you would a family member, and showing up not meaning just like walking into the room, but being fully present, giving them eye contact, asking them questions to show interest when they share something. And we'll do a lot of activities, especially early in the year, where they have the opportunity to show those family-like behaviors. So like on Fridays, we'll have something we call Friday Fun Day, where the kids can sign up to perform for one another. And sometimes it's solos, sometimes it's duets. But the big it of it is not the performance itself, but it's the feedback that the students give to one another. And they give specific musical feedback, so they're using vocabulary and it's an academic activity. But they're learning how to be an audience member when someone is performing. And when someone is, you know, like totally singing a bop, they're snapping to it, they're moving to it, they're smiling at them, just like that, Jesse, same exact way. And then afterwards, they share specific positive things about how the student performed. And it's, you know, activities like that build family within. And we do a lot of SEL activities. You know, we have Monday Us Day most weeks, and so it's just like a 15-minute activity where the kids are just having us time and they're connecting and they're learning about one another, you know, group questions, this or that, things like that, which with social distancing is really hard, man.
Yes.
But we're trying to make it work anyway. And then you know, I think you're familiar through Melissa with the Songbird project that we do, where kids are trained in how sharing music with people with memory disorders can really light them up and create connections that way. And so that is a way that we've connected with the community as well.
Tell us more about that.
Huh?
Tell us more about that. Like, what is it? What do you do?
Sure. So it's Jesse's got to be so sick of hearing about this. He's heard about it so
awesome.
much.
I'm never sick of hearing it. It really is just such an incredible program.
So on Wednesday, so this is during a not COVID year, because during a COVID year, we don't want to get the old people sick. But we each semester, 20 students are trained in learning about dementia and Alzheimer's and how that works. And they get an empathy training where they are taught about some of the different symptoms that people can have outside of just memory difficulties, and they are outfitted with different physical things that are not harmful to the student in any way, but maybe like goggles that are somewhat similar to cataracts, or gloves where a couple of the fingers are taped together, so it's like arthritis without the pain, and or thick gloves that help them understand some mobility issues and that kind of a thing. Headphones that have random sound effects coming in that are like those kinds of symptoms that people in memory care might have, and they're given simple tasks to try and perform, like button up a shirt or fill 4 glasses with water, simple things. And the kids really quickly realize how difficult those tasks can be for people who are living with memory disorders. And then they learn more about the ins and outs of those disorders and how to communicate with people who have them. And they learn then about music from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, popular music from back then. And they are given the opportunity to, following that training, and there's more to the training, that's it in a very small nutshell. And the training is 4 to 5 weeks usually. We then go and start visits at our local assisted living and their memory care floors. And so 2 of my chorus students will be paired up with 1 memory care resident, and we use the tenets of music and memory, which is something that you can Google, and it's awesome, which is basically where you figure out what kind of music this resident will connect to, or what specific songs residents will connect to, and you build a playlist for that resident. And this is all also featured in the documentary Alive Inside, and it was the Alive Inside team that first came to us and shopped a program like this to us using music and memory. And so the kids build that playlist with residents, and sometimes it's just asking the residents, what music do you like? But oftentimes the residents have aphasia, and so they're not able to use verbal language to express what they like. So the students use their songs that they've been exposed to in the training, and they'll just play a song and see if a resident will start tapping their foot or singing along. And if they do, then that is added to the playlist. And then they try and find similar songs. And if they don't, then they look to songs from different genres, and they build that playlist, and the students learn those songs. They go home and they memorize the songs, so that each week when we're visiting with the residents, we usually do like 5 or 6 weeks of resident visits. The kids will connect headphones to a splitter, and the kids will put on their headphones and the resident will put on their headphones, and they'll sing and dance to the songs every week. And some weeks they totally go off script, and the kids are like, hey, I really like this Ed Sheeran song and I think you'll like it. And they'll sing that. And of course the residents are like, I see a happy kid, so I'm happy. And they dance with them. Sometimes it's around the holidays. And so it's like Christmas music or Hanukkah music, and the kids will play and sing. Sometimes it becomes a sing along where the kids are working with their resident, and other residents are like, what you doing there? And they come over and they sing and dance with them. And so it's just weeks of that. And it's just a way of spreading joy through music and creating connections through music, and getting rid of the stigmas of kids not thinking that they can't talk to people because they're in their 80s, or they'll never know how they can relate to these people, or, oh, this person has Alzheimer's and so I can't have a normal conversation with them, when you really can. And it breaking down that stigma has helped kids not only to see how music can connect outside of the chorus room and outside of the music room, but also makes a lot of these kids want to go into this for a career. And that's so important, because that field is so lacking, and the need is growing and growing and growing, because the amount of people who have dementia and memory disorders is growing exponentially, and we need more people to be excited and passionate about sharing with them, even entering into music therapy, all that stuff. So it's a really rewarding program and a great way to get out and involved in the community.
That just sounds so amazing. Like, just so to see, my wife's grandmother had dementia in there, and just to see how she would light up when my own kids would show up. Sometimes she wouldn't remember who we were, but just kids being there made the residents feel excited, and then adding that musical element to it.
Absolutely.
It's probably pretty amazing for them and to see that connection.
Oh yeah. Well, and some of these residents, they won't be able to speak.
Right.
But you play a song that they know and they will sing. Absolutely. And I'm sure some of both of y'all have had experiences where you've seen that happening, but it's really powerful.
That's amazing. I love that. Jesse, you did something last year during quarantine that was pretty impressive, that you still wanted to have your kids showcase what they learned during the year. So tell us about what y'all did and how the lockdown brought about a different kind of theater experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So last year we were in the midst of rehearsing for Cinderella, which was a musical I was so excited to do. We had the princess, we had the set, we had all the costumes, we had everything. We were like 2 weeks away from showtime, and then we never came back from spring break. And there were 8th graders that actually was my first set of 8th graders at Innovation, who I had for all 3 years. And it was such a special group, and we couldn't let them go out on just kind of deflate with it. And so what we chose to do is we found a script that had just been published, 10 Ways to Survive Life in Quarantine. And it was written because of quarantine, and kids weren't having this creative outlet. And suddenly something that was so community-based and so social inherently in nature became very isolated and became very individualized. And so what we decided to do with a lot of the cast members of it, and of course it was optional, but what we decided to do is we decided to put that show on. And during quarantine, we kind of scheduled individual rehearsals where we would meet on Teams or Big Blue Button, and we would go through the script. And it at a time when everything was brand new, and it was still, I mean, it's still going on, and it's still incredibly important to wear masks and to be cautious. But when everything was brand new and nobody really had a full understanding, it was nice to have a couple moments with students that felt normal, even though you were through a computer instead of being on stage and being behind and being in front, giving notes, finding these kids creating choices. And instead of them being on stage with their friends, they were suddenly in their room with their cat, and they rocked it. It was such an incredible experience. It's a shame the way that it had to come about, but these kids were so determined, and they had such an energy and an excitement about them. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. And I've had some incredible casts, and we've had some great shows, but this one was different because we all kind of had, inherently you'll have students going through something, or this person's family is doing this, but it's very rare that you have the entire cast going through the exact same thing. And so finding that collaborative nature and finding that team energy was so inspiring. It gave us all a sense of purpose and a sense of, we want to come together. Even though we can't physically be together, we can mentally and emotionally and virtually be together to still create a similar form of art. And it was so cool. And just something that we hadn't thought of before, the ability to stream our shows. We had students who have family in other countries and other states. They all of a sudden had that same theatrical experience that we all did. And it kind of guided to us right now. We're in the midst of preparing for our show that is April 22nd and 23rd. And we will have a streaming element where we're still going to be able to use some of the lessons and things that we learned in quarantine. And we have a student who just moved from Morocco, and he's going to be streaming it to his family who's back there. And it while we physically had to be distant, we were able to create this virtual collaboration, and it really was an incredible experience.
I love that. I love that you were still able, because I know if I were in 8th grade, 12th grade, any of those, like it would have been heartbreaking to lose that the final year concert, musical, whatever it is. So that's kudos for you to finding a way to make it work for those kids. I love that. I just love that a lot. And so that kind of goes into this because it's a weird year. Our classrooms all look 100, I don't even know how much different like than they ever would be. I do these big, huge experiential learning activities with my students and projects, and we do things for the whole school, and we just can't do those. So how have you, as theater and music teachers, how have y'all kind of made it work? Because I can only imagine what it would have been like if I was a virtual trombone player with the rest of the band there. Like you've got kids who are acting and singing. Like how do you make that work?
Carefully.
Because even though
it's just all about being creative. It's finding different ways to have them thrive instead of them. I mean, in theater, we have students doing duet scenes. Nothing changed. Whether we're still doing those duet scenes, it just happens to be one person is virtual on Big Blue Button and they're at home at Launch Ed, and the other person's in class, and it's learning this new technology and setting up 4 or 5 different cameras so that they can see and hear without the echo and the boom. And it's still finding ways that you can be engaging. Like I teach 2 classes in my cafeteria because my classes are too big to be in my classroom. But in that 48-person class, when everybody is spread out at a different table, we're still able to do the types of things. Like we can still play games, but instead of them moving all into one corner, they'll go to one side of their table, or they will still be able to do some pantomiming, which is acting without speaking, without using your words. And we can still play a mime down the line where they have to pass it down, almost like a whisper down the lane. And so it's taking the elements, especially because our classes really are so collaborative in nature, and they are about being together and finding those physical and emotional ways to be together, to be present with each other, and just adjusting. There are very few things that I haven't. Now, none of the things I've done this year are the same that they were, but the content is the same, and it's just finding a different delivery. And I'm finding that this year more than ever, these students need this type of outlet, that they need these types of questions and these types of projects and these types of, albeit distant, collaboration to really communicate. Because in a world where you kind of can be, anybody who is launch ed kind of is with their computer and they're in their own school system. But when you have to be in a breakout room with your partner and you're doing a duet scene, you have to figure it out. And as weird as it sounds, it's when you're backed into a corner, that's when you thrive. When under enough pressure is when a pearl comes out, I think. I was never a science kid.
It's when something comes out. I don't know.
We got science and stuff happening, and none of us teach science, so don't fact check our science here.
I apologize to any science teacher who is watching this right now. We have done you a great disservice.
Especially Miss Vadia.
I'm sorry, Miss Vadia.
We love Miss Vadia.
We do love Miss Vadia. Yeah, it's been a trip, man, trying to make it work. A lot of people might remember early on in the pandemic, like January, there was that choir rehearsal in Washington where all those people got sick and a lot of them were elderly and a bunch of them passed away. And because of that, all of us in the choral community basically collectively freaked out because we were not about to be the death of our students because of this activity that is so important to us and so important to them, but never more important than the kids' lives, right? So we have a lot of safety precautions in place, and there were a couple of universities that were sponsored by a ton of arts organizations around the country who did a performing arts aerosol study, and that has guided how, especially how band directors and choir directors are doing things, you know, the other arts areas as well. But band and choir especially are both, I mean, think wind instruments. You played the trombone. It's a lot of concentrated air, tons of triplets, you know, singing similar types of stuff. And so we obviously we have to be 6 feet apart. Obviously we have to be masked. That's, you know, any class. We also can only sing or play instruments for 30 minutes at a time if it is indoors. And then we need to immediately clear, well, it's recommended that you immediately clear the space so that the aerosols that are created by the students can then be sucked up into the HVAC system. And in OCPS are, you know, classroom sized rooms clear in roughly 20 minutes. And so that makes a singing class real interesting. And so, and like if I wanted to sing at the end of a class period, for example, I can't do it in my chorus room because I have the next class of kids coming into the chorus room afterwards. And so adapting that has been a trip. So number one, you've got your launch ed kids who need to be on mute because the lag is real exciting. And you know, of course, kids singing off of mute, they feel like they're a soloist, and most kids don't come to a chorus class to sing on their own. They come to a chorus class to learn to sing together. And so it is very stressful for a lot of them to come off of mute and to perform. And so the students are at home are singing on mute, and we are singing first half of the year, it was outside, which means the connection for the kids at home was extra spicy. So now we will typically start class in my classroom, and then I will transfer them from my desktop to my laptop. We go into the cafeteria. I have one of my pianos already in the cafeteria ready to go. I have this whole little like music station set up in the cafeteria. And like TBH, most of the kids hate singing in the cafeteria because they're so far apart from each other. They can only hear themselves. They'll like, you know, oftentimes like I poke at them. I'm like, it's not whisper choir, y'all. Like you got to make some sounds. It is tricky, but man, are the kids resilient, and they go for it, and they work hard, and they swallow that very difficult pill to swallow. That is feeling like you're singing on your own, even when you are singing with a group. And so we'll be in the cafeteria for 20, 30 minutes. Then we'll come back to the chorus room, and, you know, we'll do it all again. I'm Swiffering the risers so that the kids don't share butt sweat. It's like, it's a thing. And then for performances, that's been a tricky thing to tackle this year, because putting together a virtual choir, like, Lord bless and keep any music teachers who are making virtual choirs, and theater teachers like Jesse who are putting together how to survive quarantine performances, because the video editing and the sound editing is another level. And so what we've done at my school, and different schools are doing it different ways, is I have evening after school. If I want to do a concert, each class has one evening after school rehearsal, and then the following week they have their concert taping. And so it's all masked, it's all distanced, and we have 30 minutes to rehearse in one space. And so we start in the band room, and we're in there for 20 minutes. Then we transfer to the cafeteria, and we're in there for 30 minutes. And it's an opportunity for the launch ed students to be able to come onto campus and make music together. And they say for the first time, it's like, oh, this is what chorus is supposed to be. It's such a rewarding experience for them. And so we're actually in the midst of doing that with Motown music right now.
Oh, fun.
It's super fun. And so we are in after school rehearsal mode right now for Motown, and the next week is taping mode. But we released a concert in this kind of a system of just a few weeks ago. As a YouTube thing, we sent it out to our staff and tried to connect the community with that as well. But a really cool aspect of it was I looked at the kids and said, okay, how do you want to make this yours? How do you want to make this special? And they wanted to narrate the concert. And so between each, video of the kids performing, we have kids talking about the background of the songs. We have kids introducing their choir, and we have this great introduction to the cambiata tenor bass chorus, which is mostly students who identify as male. And they're saying, in the pack, we have voices that are changed. And then you have a kid come on the screen and go, hi, or sorry, unchanged. And the kid goes, hi, and then changing. And the kid goes, hey, and then changed. And the kid goes, hello. And so it's like, it's fun to kind of creatively figure out, like, but not hard. Like, it's iMovie, so it's just drag and drop, and the kids can record things on a Flipgrid. How they can make it their own and how they can talk about the music in a really powerful way. I'm talking for so long. I'm so sorry. It was really powerful ending our last concert with Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is also known as the Black National Anthem. And I just asked the kids to write about the song, about their feelings about the song, about the history of the song. And the kids were so insightful in how they talked about this. And so they wrote their own script, and each kid recorded a line, and we pieced it together. And the kids still talk about how cool it was to see the students introducing Lift Every Voice and Sing in a meaningful way. And then all of the students in the intermediate and advanced choirs in our gym, all very spaced apart, 100 kids singing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it was a really powerful musical experience that was connecting to culturally what is going on right now. And it was awesome, but also very difficult to do. So any teachers who are watching this and are like, that's a lot and I'm feeling guilty for not doing it, don't feel guilty at all. It was too much work, but it was really worth it, in my personal opinion.
I love how y'all talk. You each hit on some things, and I'm just gonna give a little my own kind of commentary about it, about empowering your students with different ways and how you can engage them. And I love that about the arts, because it's such a different way of giving voice to your students, and allowing them to find their place at the school and their place and the greater community. And the world, and kind of who they are and where they are and what they're supposed to do. So I still see it even in high school. Arts are like a safe place for a lot of kids. And so I really appreciate what y'all do. And I think it's amazing. And I've loved hearing what y'all get to say, because I've heard secondhand from my wife just about the awesome things that y'all do, and I see pictures of it and stuff like that online, but to talk with y'all is pretty amazing. So thank you. And then and y'all are like arts, theater and music and stuff like that. I just love to end with kind of something not even educational on this. So what's something that maybe we've introduced a lot of stuff during this quarantine. So I've gotten a lot of good recommendations. Maybe something you're listening to, or you're reading, or you're watching right now, just to help kind of with this crazy world that we're in, just to give you maybe some release, or just something to get your mind off it, or something insightful, or something like that. So it has to be all of them. It can just be something that you think is pretty cool and you want to share.
Totally. Okay, so it's almost like a guilty pleasure show, but it's not really a guilty pleasure show. It's just one of those, like, the show itself is terrible. The acting is awful, but the story is incredible. It's like a History Channel show. It's called The Foods That Made Us. And it creates these drama things about the war between Coke and Pepsi, like coming to get to like introduce to the market, how fast food was created, how White Castle, and they're like different segmented episodes. It is so interesting, and like it really is like people are on the phone and all of us, it's such overacting. You hear this narration like, and then this happened. And it's one of those things that I never would have expected to like this show about like the history of food, but they also have a podcast that my fiance listens to in the car on the way, and it's just you see a bag of chips and you're like, okay, this is a bag of chips, but it's weird how much competition there is. I mean, the last one I just watched was on the Coney Island hot dogs, and like Nathan's, how that started because he worked at a restaurant down the street and he wanted to run them out of business, and so he started cutting prices. It is so interesting, especially for a history person.
Yeah.
And it's all about food, which God love. And recently, after Prince Philip's funeral, I was told that I need to start watching The Crown. So I think
so good.
I think that's my next like major sit down commitment.
Seasons 1, 2, and 4, man. 3 was fine too.
You're not going to get booked on their show now.
I know. I'll never be accepted in. Oops. So it's so funny that we're all history people here. You've got a theater teacher, a music teacher, and a history teacher, but social studies is like where it's at. So I've been super addicted to this podcast called Throughline. It's on NPR, and the idea is they take things that are happening now, current events, and they trace them back basically as far as they can go in time. And they bring on experts and they do tons of fact checking. And it is so interesting. Actually, Stewart, you might find some episodes that you would want to share with your students. There are a lot of people who call in and they're teachers and they've used Throughline episodes to like center lessons around. But and I know that like educational things aren't like necessarily the most recharging things for people, but oh my gosh, it is so fascinating. And I've been going on morning walks every day, and Throughline is like my jam on those morning walks. And I mean, it's got like the history of bananas, which I had no idea. Holy cow. And
well, y'all are hitting like, I teach a whole unit on agriculture, so I got to get the food, the history of foods, and podcast about bananas.
Oh, dude, the history of bananas is gruesome. Get your butt ready.
Yeah,
it is exploitative.
If you've never heard of the Banana Republic, it's pretty happening. Anyway, so the Throughline is just, it's so cool, and it's very, very timely all the time. But also sometimes they'll have random episodes about things you never would have thought of, like bananas. And then they trace it all the way back through history, and seeing the way that things are connected. I mean, it honestly, it influences my teaching a lot of the time, because, you know, opening up kids' minds to the ways that things are connected beyond the classroom and through history is just really cool. So
awesome. Well, I did one of these. I release these every week, but I had another interview at the beginning of the week, and so I shared this, so I'll have to share it again. I guess I have to do these now in order. I have to do that one before I do this one, or it would make no sense, the segment I just had. But my oldest son just turned 12, and he has gotten into, and I know, Jesse, you talked to Melissa after we saw this show in Chicago. He's gotten into Hamilton.
Absolutely.
And so
good boy.
They are, and my middle son, so they'll like, it's so funny, they'll get like the different we have not AirPods but like AirPods, and so one will have, and they'll each have one in each ear, and then we listen to the song. And so sometimes I pick them up from school, and so I picked them up today, and they were like, can we listen to a song? I'm like, well, which one do you want? And so they picked one, and because it's, you know, enough that we could listen to two on the way home. But they love it. It's so much fun, and so it makes me happy because it like is the perfect marriage of my love for music and my love for history. So I'm like, hey, go ahead. We'll just listen to this as we want. So.
And the coolest thing about that, and honestly, I think with Evan, it's the same thing, and with my show, it's the same thing, is it kind of takes these concepts and makes them real. Like, George Washington was a real person. Like, he had faults, he had flaws. These bananas didn't just come because, like, we really are nice to everybody and everybody's kind and wonderful. And it kind of creates and shows it in such a different way.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're really into that. And so you just fall right back into it, and like, oh, I could listen to this.
I am so happy you've got musical theater babies at home.
Oh, they have to, you know, gotta have that.
I didn't know you tap danced.
I think that needs to be an episode.
Like it was nothing, and then started recording. I wasn't ready. That's amazing.
It should be on a Mr. Parker Meets Special Talents edition.
There we go. But it's something you do that nobody will expect.
Shameless plug, OCPS Top Talent is coming up, and everyone needs to watch it and vote, and it's awesome. And I feel like they should incorporate you as in between.
It's going to be really funny if this video is posted after that is done.
Yeah.
Likely.
Side on this one, and a couple years ago they did the musical Crazy for You at Winter Park, and you know, it's all tap dance. Like, it's like when I don't even know how many numbers from that we did throughout in the tap dancing, because it has so many awesome dance numbers. And a couple of the girls in one of my classes were in like the girls, like the Bobby's like little girls that would come and dance. And they're like, oh, and I was like, oh, I can tap dance. And like, oh, can you? I was like, yeah, I can. And they're like, well, let's see it. So they get up and like, what can you do? And I'm like, well, you tell me. And so they did a little time step, and I did, and they were like, and all the kids were like, he's better than you are. I was like, well, I did start when I was in 3rd grade, so.
Amazing.
So.
How long did you go
How
for?
long? Yeah.
I danced all the way through high school, and then I did a couple of things in at Rollins. They had a little dance thing there, so I did a couple of things there.
Just a couple little things here and there.
Just a couple, you know.
But so yeah, I danced all through high school, and then same thing with the trombone. I started playing when I was in 5th grade, and I played through college.
That's awesome.
That's
Your
really
parents
cool.
are incredible for supporting you all the way through that, because it's you don't super often find kids who from elementary school through college keep the arts in their lives in such an active way. So you are very, very fortunate.
Yeah, and it's
the
such
two of us, we see firsthand how important that is, and how it can help not only guide academically and guide that, but socially. And we're really lucky to be in that position.
But you know that.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot. There's so much leadership that you learn, and so much community and communication, and just working together and partnership that come from the arts, the performing arts, in such a meaningful way. I loved all of my teachers, but my middle school band director and high school band director were married. So Mr. and Mrs. Kidd will always be some of the most important teachers that I had, just because I spent so much time with them. So y'all do so much for your school and for your students as art teachers. So thank you.
Thank you. And I completely agree. A performing arts class should absolutely be required of every student every year. You know what you said.
Well, hey, we went a little longer than we wanted to, but I've absolutely had a great time talking with y'all.
Me too. Thank you.
This has definitely been a great time, and what y'all do is amazing, and how you've worked through the pandemic, Jesse, with your show, and Evan, what you are able to do with those memory care patients both of that is very admirable, and taking the arts to a step beyond the classroom. So I really, I know your students appreciate that. I know their families appreciate that, and Orange County appreciates that, because we've got an awesome group of arts educators, fine arts, performing arts, visual arts educators in our district. And so y'all are two of the best. So thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the platform, man. Anytime we can get arts forward, we are happy.
And thank y'all for tuning in. Hopefully you'll join us again for a next episode where we meet some other great teachers in Orange County Public Schools.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you so much.
Y'all have a good night.
You too.
That awkward moment where I'm like, now how do I stop recording?